Trump's taxes reveal who really is the biggest loser.
McCann's lawyer says to issue a statement making public.
Anne Hathaway geeks out over RuPaul.
What would you like to say to Anne? Darling. You are the winner of this.
On our road to Stonewall, Marsha P. Johnson.
Of making them chant gay power.
We're caught in the middle of LGBT Cuban rights. It's all happening out tonight. Join us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Special guest, Napoleon Plays. And your host, fashion designer Carlos Marrero. Trans activist Aaron Phoenix. Reality star Chef Josie. DJ Diva Power Infiniti. Log Cabin Republican Joe Brookman. And our host, Al Ferguson. It all starts right now, live on It's Happening Out.
Well, that applause in at the Fort Lauderdale Grand Hotel wasn't very good. Let's try that again. Everybody in this audience?
Yes, that's better.
There we go. That's much, much better.
Thank you.
Welcome to another edition of It's Happening Out, America's most popular live gay talk show. And we're coming to you from the Fort Lauderdale Grand Hotel, Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This is the freaking gayest place on planet Earth, and we tell you about that every single week. And we're happy for another episode of It's Happening Out. First off, let me get some housekeeping out of the way. America, I really apologize for what we did last week. We'll try to improve a lot this. My friend Josie did a great job. Congratulations to you as host.
That's the best time we've ever had.
It was
at this
a fun
table.
show. I watched it. I was in Cuba, and I watched the show. You did great. Some of your cast members, not so much. But you did great.
Oh, are you kidding me? I couldn't do it without them.
Yes.
Trust me.
Yeah. All right. Well, the production staff last week made the joke on the Game of Thrones about the Queen arriving in King's Landing, and production has done the exact same thing with my return. Something about the King returning back, and so we. Oh God, I hope it's not Joffrey, because his end was.
It is Joffrey. It is Joffrey, baby.
His end was absolutely
We're talking
terrible.
Foreshadowing of events.
As I told you. We're going to talk about Game of Thrones, and I'm gonna reveal every detail just to piss Napoleon Plays off.
You're watching the last night Al Ferguson lived, America.
Yes, exactly.
It's
All right.
out.
Well, as we told you, we're coming from the gayest place on planet Earth in the Fort Lauderdale Grand Hotel. Next week, I hear we're going to have our new set here, and it's happening out. We're very excited about what's coming. Remember, we're a live show, so you're going to see everything, warts and all. This is a live show. We ask you right now to start a watch party. And in fact, we have a little summary here about starting a watch party. Watch this, I guess.
When viewing our show in your app, please click share. After clicking share, your screen should change and you can click watch party. On the next screen, you can write text to your viewing audience. And then click start watch party. You've done it. Now you can control the conversation in your own private chat of our episode.
So come on, America. There's a lot of gay people out there and a lot of people that support the gay community and watch America's most popular live gay talk show.
For some reason.
We're going to talk about a lot of really interesting things tonight. So we ask you to like us and subscribe to It's Happening Out in Facebook. We're in all kinds of social medias, broadcasting live as we speak, especially Facebook and YouTube. So you can watch us wherever you prefer. We always begin our show with the meme of the week, and we have an interesting meme this week as we show it to you now, and we thought it was funny. My girlfriend and me, my girlfriend and me, and her gay father I met on Grindr.
Woo! Been there.
Who is this
That's
for?
the dream, everybody.
It could be for a lot of us, right? Exactly. All right. That's our meme of the week. We also start the top of the show of It's Happening Out. We like to do something fun and positive. Gay, and of course, women are involved. Trans is involved. There's all kinds of letters in our alphabet.
Wait, what are we involved in? What did we
yes.
agree to?
Yeah.
But there's also gay men, and we saw this
Are
this
there?
week from Brian Hahn,
Unrepresented group.
and we thought, well, this is a perfect way to start our show. Best thing of the week. Watch this. Oh, I'm so bored with hot, beautiful men in the water.
Those boys
working
know how to
out.
do squats. I love it.
Wait.
This was Power's new favorite thing, apparently.
That's called the 7-minute workout. We only showed you 1 minute of it. It gets really intense.
Imagine how long I'd be applauding if I could see the whole thing.
Yes, exactly.
Is that what they call it these days? Applauding?
Applauding, exactly. Well, America, we're really happy to report there were 2 really great things this week. These boys were the first. And then the best thing of the week also had to deal with scientific exploration. And normally you wouldn't say something in a classroom is the best thing of the week.
depends who your teacher
But one of
was.
our favorites, Bill Nye the Science Guy, this week, you know, he's been talking about global warming and science issues for like 30 years.
Yeah, it's awful.
This week, Bill Nye kind of snapped a little in his education of America, and he did one of the best things of the week about global warming. Watch what happened with Bill Nye the Science Guy.
I've got an experiment for you. Safety glasses on. By the end of this century, if emissions keep rising, the average temperature on Earth could go up another 4 to 8 degrees. What I'm saying is the planet's on fucking fire. There are a lot of things we could do to put it out. Are any of them free? No, of course not. Nothing's free, you idiots. Grow the fuck up. You're not children anymore. I didn't mind explaining photosynthesis to you when you were 12, but you're adults now, and this is an actual crisis. Got it? Safety glasses off, motherfuckers.
What are your thoughts?
It's official, America. I love Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Is it me or did he get hotter all of a
Wait,
sudden?
was he talking to Washington? I just
Well,
want to...
no, listen, it's interesting because the way I found that video this week was through Kamala Harris, her retweet. So hats off to you, Kamala, okay?
That's why I'm interested. Joe, what do you feel when you see that?
He laughs right along with
I laughed
us.
right along with you. You
Yeah.
agree with climate change as a thing?
Oh, no. That's not the best thing of the
I
week.
believe Bill Nye, the science guy, has gone off the deep end. That I agree with
All
Al.
right. All right. Speaking of
He
this,
spoke my
as
language.
Napoleon tries to commandeer and take control
here
of
we
the
go.
show, and Joe tries to take control of the show, my only control of this madness is with these chips. I ask the question, why are you people still talking? So what will happen is you'll hear a bell through the show. We've kind of identified the amount of time that we want to do. once we finish that, I cut the conversation off. And the only way that they can continue to talk is buy me a drink. That's the only way. They throw a chip in, and then they get 1 more minute of uninterrupted conversation. That's the only way they can
Because Al's too busy drinking to interrupt us.
Yes, exactly. I'm drinking. And so they can do a chip. All right. Those are the good things of the week. Let's move on to our news. And there's been a lot this week. Let's begin with celebrity news. First off, I guess everybody has heard this, a gay icon. I guess you would call her that because I loved her, certainly. And I know millions of Americans did, and the gay community did. Doris Day passed away. Let us show you a little thing that we prepared about Doris Day.
Pillow talk, wonder how it would be to have someone to pillow talk with me. Oh, there must be a pillow talking boy.
He just had charisma.
There must be a boy. And the bride.
She was chirpy, she was pretty, she had perfect skin, she had great teeth, she had bouncy blonde hair.
For making whoopee.
Well, look, Doris Day did so many amazing things for the gay community. How can you not love a 50s and 60s and 70s movie star that talks about pillow talk, first off, in the gay community? Of course, she did the beautiful song, Que Sera, Sera, which was a song that many in the gay community identified with in terms of saying, whatever will be, and we just got to accept and move forward. And of course, in Rock Hudson and his situation with contracting AIDS and the terrible way that he died, along with Elizabeth Taylor, Doris Day was the unconditional rock of saying that AIDS must be addressed, AIDS must have research, AIDS funding must happen, and Rock Hudson was a worthwhile human being that should not be abandoned.
Well,
you
I learned
had
a lot
to love
today.
Doris Day for that. Any other thoughts about Doris Day's passing this week?
That's the first I'm learning all of that about her.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, well, good. That's terrific.
That's cool.
All right, a big event this week, and we're sad about Doris Day's passing. Second thing that we want to tell you about in celebrity news is Anne Hathaway. Now, of course, she is fantastic. I loved her in The Devil Wears Prada, honestly. Oh, yeah. She wins the Academy Award in Les Miserables, but who knew that she was such a fan of something that was a little less lowbrow? Watch this of what happened this week.
You know what? There is a show that I do watch to make me feel better. Drag Race.
Oh, RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh my God!
Great show.
Oh my God! I
Yes.
love that show so much.
Yes. Have you met RuPaul?
No, I've never met RuPaul.
Well, he's my guest tomorrow night. Is there anything you'd like to say to him? Well, why don't you just say to him right now? Ru?
What? Monet Exchange's entire
Monet Exchange,
Monet
yes.
entire journey. I really take this very seriously. And then the growth between season 10 and season 11 and the way she stepped her up. Since I started being an actress, I've learned how to step my up. And now I'm her up, and I'm just thrilled for her. And me, and you, and you.
Thank you.
What a fantastic moment. How can we not identify, no matter how big you are in entertainment, to meet exactly, fangirling, exactly that. We have a slide here capturing the perfect moment here of Anne Hathaway with RuPaul. And one of the reasons we report it in celebrity news is we often forget. Even 10 years ago, I was involved in the early seasons of RuPaul. How could you possibly imagine this moment of what gay culture would do in the broad American culture? An absolutely amazing moment in celebrity news. Next thing we want to tell you about in celebrity news this week is, of course, we reported on the Met Gala. You all did a fantastic segment on fashion. Congratulations, Carlos. It was beautiful on what happened at the Met Gala. But something else big this week happened at the Met Gala, and that is Janelle and Lupita became a couple.
Oh,
yeah.
A sexy
power
couple.
Sexy power couple.
What creativity
and
in that group.
that happened in their announcement at the Met Gala. And these two power personalities
I don't know how that happened.
become perhaps the most beautiful couple in America.
In the world.
Very beautiful. Big time celebrity news.
Does that get you excited, Josie?
Yeah.
Fruitful years,
yeah,
you two.
yeah.
And just let me know if you need a personal chef. I'll be happy
right.
to come and cook for you guys.
Right. Last,
in bed.
Oh, of course, in bed.
I mean, I don't have to be there with you. Remember, I'm a voyeur.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Last celebrity news that we want to report on this week, and this was big for me personally. I've said I'm going to see this probably 14 times. I'm not even going to reveal what you're getting ready to see. It was so important to me, honestly. And for older gay community, this is a bullseye moment. I know Joe felt the exact same way when he watched it. I hope young gay America will feel the same.
We ain't going to be young anymore by the time you...
Okay. All right. Let's watch this.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I've heard of once in a lullaby. Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true.
Well, as you can see, Renee Zellweger is going to play Judy Garland, and she sings in the movie.
Yeah.
Nobody can be Judy Garland, so it's perfect that it's her voice. Her voice is not Judy Garland's voice, but spectacular as you see there. What do y'all think about this?
Okay, it's definitely not Judy Garland's voice. We can all admit that. It looks nothing like Judy. It sounds nothing like Judy. She does not hold the attention of the audience like Judy. To get Renee Zellweger to play Judy Garland is absolutely asinine. How could they have not found anyone else that would play this role better than she can? I was re-listening to Chicago to try to just compare it, and I'm not even a little bit excited to see what she can do with this. You don't cast a rabbit to play a shark, and that's exactly what they've done here. They've cast little meek Renee Zellweger to play the biggest icon in gay culture, Judy Garland. It should have been anybody else. How dare they?
Well,
do
there
that?
goes our sponsorship. From the,
She can play Doris Day just fine, but not Judy.
Other thoughts.
I will wait till the movie comes out to cast my opinions and my judgments.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the movie. I don't think I can glean all that from a trailer. Napoleon obviously can.
I do.
I will
Superpower.
I don't have that superpower. So my superpower is watching the movie and paying my money, and then I will be back with my opinions.
Now, for the first time ever in America, It's Happening Out history, Al is throwing a fucking chip in.
Oh, wait, that means that you owe us all around at the
silence.
Right?
My 1 minute says, first, Judy Garland is one of the greatest gay icons in American history. We have honored her on our road to Stonewall. One of the things that I think is so brilliant is this is so, it's so time is now. We're watching Elton John, we're watching Queen with Freddie Mercury. It is the perfect time to take us backwards in terms of somebody from the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and 60s into the 70s that was iconic for the gay community. Judy Garland represents everything that I and Joe's generation represent in the gay community. Renee Zellweger is going to be fantastic in this role. Her singing, her voice is going to be fantastic in this role. And I make a prediction with my chip right now. She's going to be nominated for the Academy Award.
And yes. Time, silence right back.
All right, very good. All right, so our headlines on Judy Garland and the biopic coming. Now, let's move to our news headlines this week. Big news. First, we announced that the Sultan of Brunei has had a turnaround. He has reversed and changed course and will not enforce the execution of LGBT people in Brunei. The worldwide pressure of people like Elton John apparently have had effect. Calls for boycotts apparently can be successful. What do you think about the Sultan of Brunei's announcement this week?
Our actions always speak louder than our words, and the more we continue to put action behind our protest, that's the best way to create change.
But that might not be what happened here. The Sultan specifically went on record to say that this is not because there have been protests to my communities and to my hotels around the world. He said, oh, let me clarify what I said before. This is what it was. Is that true? I don't know. But he's trying to play this as if any protest did not affect his decision, as if this is just coming from him.
He didn't change course. He just took a detour. As far as I'm concerned, this is a win for us. It's a win for the LGBT community, but not really that big of a win because the law is still there. The law is still implemented. All he's saying is that he won't enforce it. That certainly means that he can enforce it at any time.
True.
So they're still under threat. They're still under danger.
Yeah. And the importance of that observation is the value. Okay. You're going to come in?
I'm
silence.
No, you could finish your thought.
No, that's all right.
Well, I think it's important to note that the clarification that was made was that basically this moratorium on the death penalty has been in place for decades. The last execution in Brunei was actually in 1957, whereas the last time we executed an innocent person apparently was about 1997. So I'm just saying, they have a lot of other inhumane laws. It certainly is not exactly, a good thing, but we shouldn't necessarily act like we've got the moral compass either. I think the lesson we can take from this is to be willing to fight injustice, whether it's abroad or whether it's in our backyard.
That's an interesting observation. And the point that I was going to make, and really to both, is I think that there's value in what we do at It's Happening Out. Because being America's most popular live gay talk show, we are here every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. And the Brunei story has evolved in weeks, and we report on it tonight, and we'll continue to report on it. So to Power's point, if the Sultan begins to enforce in any way, we're going to talk about it here. And the gay community is going to talk about it, and advocates like Elton John are going to raise his voice also. Moving ahead in terms of news, big news this week, we asked the question, Donald Trump, is he actually the biggest loser? It's been reported now that Donald Trump lost more than $1 billion in the last decades in real estate tax filings. And basically, he was elected president as being, a business entrepreneur and perhaps genius in his businesses, and we see that. What do y'all think about the news being reported this week about him losing $1 billion?
Well, I have a question because for everybody on this panel, how many of you own your own business? How many of you are an LLC and file a return? How many of you try to minimize the amount of money you pay state and federal taxes? Okay, so you have something in common with Donald Trump. He just has it on a grander scale than any of us.
You just burned me to my core, sir.
Sorry, sweetie, it's a fact of life. We all have businesses. We all try to make it zero on the bottom line so we pay as little taxes as possible.
He
just happens to have it in a billion times more than us.
Every taxpayer in this world, any person who I know who has any sort of intelligence is going to do their best so that they don't pay as much taxes as, necessarily as required. And
so
that's
why are
because
we want for doing the same thing that each of us
the breaks. $1 billion in breaks could feed a nation.
Do you want to use your chip? No, it's the order of magnitude. It works.
Use your chip.
My explanation
All
is
right,
fine.
we're going to move on in terms of news. We want to talk about the breaking news that is happening just today in terms of the escalation of tensions with Iran. Much is going on in the Middle East and the Arabian Gulf. The State Department has called for a mandatory evacuation of all Americans out of Iraq. The justification of the scale down of even the U.S. Embassy in Iraq is such that they are concerned about Iran's influence in the country of Iraq, and they are evacuating only essential personnel staying in Iraq. The Fifth Fleet is being moved into the Gulf of Arabia as we speak, and there is discussion of conflict. And we discussed today how we were going to phrase this, and we're not going to use the ultimate word that is on the horizon, but we'll say conflict of escalation, and the escalation of the conflict. We've spent $1 trillion in Iraq to stabilize. Remember, it was going to be our impetus of democracy in the Middle East, and here's where we are today. What do y'all think about our decisions and what's going on in Iran and Iraq?
I think first you have to look at what's taken place, especially over the last 2 weeks, in terms of the number of Saudi Arabia vessels, oil-carrying vessels that were damaged and attacked, unknown assailants, and the pipelines in Saudi Arabia that carry a large portion of their oil was attacked by drones and destroyed. So the escalation, while we want to talk about the U.S.'s presence, the escalation is by unknown sources. And one would begin to conclude that the sanctions that the United States and the European community have placed on Iran and the increased financial and other sanctions are actually having an impact so that Iran is trying to act out. I mean, their ultimate goal has been to get rid of Israel and the United States, and by approaching Iraq, they actually get one step closer to the Mediterranean Sea, they get one step closer to Syria and Israel in order to take and control them more than they already do. So, yes, I'm scared. But
the president has suggested that he may commit as many as 120,000 troops to the Middle East. His statement when the New York Times pressed him on that is that that was fake news, that they had not announced that. And I understood his statement. It made sense. But he said even if we did that, it would be substantially more than 120,000 troops. Does that worry you in any way in terms of the balance of the instability in the Middle East and our commitment in terms of using...
Listen, U.S. military intervention worries me no matter what, because historically we do not have a good track record for dipping into other countries' affairs and having a good outcome. And then you compound that on top of the fact that Donald Trump is the one in charge of the button. Yeah, no, that scares the shit out of me. Not only because of what, I mean, if a qualified president was doing this, I would be worried. Let alone somebody who thinks that they can navigate policy with tweets.
Okay, I'm going. Chip in, go. Okay. All right, so what concerns me about this is that I have from the beginning thought that Trump was just trying to get us into a big war, a big enough war that he could enact martial law and eventually take power forever. A world war, a war of this magnitude with Iran, with Iraq, over these exact principles, a war that's been fought for so many years on our end, and then also over the Mediterranean, is a great war in terms of getting people to rally behind it and getting change in the way that we don't want to see it. I don't want to be saying, as we joked about you at the beginning of this, all hail King Trump. And I feel like this is the next step to get there, that in doing what we're doing, we are very close to having Trump as our actual dictator, not just the president. And because the election is so close, and because it could be so close as regard to who wins, I think he's going to try to do this. I think he's going to try to remain in power and take absolute power inevitably.
That's myopic in looking at the broad strategy.
Chip,
of
do you need a chip? Are we using a chip on this one?
Where we are on the world stage.
Welcome back, Joe.
All right.
That's fine.
So Iran and Iraq is certainly very topical, breaking news as we speak. Let's move out of our celebrity and news headlines and play a little game.
Yay.
And the game that we're going to play is about everything that I know. Now, I constantly tell these talking heads that I know everything that there is. There's really, I know everything. And I constantly am challenging them to tell me something I don't know. And they frequently have great difficulty in doing that.
I'm sorry, well, we all fell asleep. What were you saying?
So we're going to play Tell Me Something I Didn't Know. And we're going to play that game. So who would like to start? Tell me something I didn't know.
Alrighty. So in 1986, Nintendo subverted gender norms in gaming. At that time, it was mostly males who played video games, or at least that was the demographic at the time. And what they did with one of their most popular series, Metroid, was have a game that was built around what was assumed to be a male. So you play this entire game as if you're a male, Samus Aran, fighting to save the girl at the end of the game. What it actually ended up being, you find out if you're a skilled player, in the end you realize you've been playing as a girl the entire time. Despite anything that you made as a preconceived notion, despite Nintendo even advertising the game as a male player, they wrote it as a he in the actual book for the game. They completely changed the game and had you, playing as a girl in the end. And that's something that was incredible back in 1986 that Nintendo did for video game culture and for gender equality.
That sounds like my whole life just in reverse.
That's funny.
Trans joke.
All right. Interesting. That's interesting, actually. And did you watch the movie Player One?
Yeah.
You know, and I
like
I thought it was pretty entertaining. I enjoyed it. I'm not the game geek.
Yeah,
that
you recognize
are.
things. So, I see it. It's funny. Joke.
Yeah. All right. All right. So I'm not the game geek you are, but I thought it was interesting to the point that you just made, which was you were playing a character and gender was totally irrelevant. And so you're playing a character, and I thought that part of the movie was interesting.
That's where we're at today in gaming culture.
I like that in terms of telling me something I didn't know. Somebody else, tell me something.
Well, this vegetable, this ingredient, is not necessarily something you want to eat before you kiss that hot, sexy guy or gal or whoever, okay?
Felt the love in there.
Yeah, okay. In Latin, onion translates to large pearl. And ancient Egyptians, they used to bury these onions with their pharaohs and present huge baskets of onions as funeral offerings.
To make people cry?
I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Actually, I did know that. I've been to the Giza Plateau in Egypt. All right. Somebody else tell me something.
We need to get like a hat that could be like worn down.
Here's
and in dunce.
Here's something that I didn't know. I did not realize that Mommy Dearest, when it came out, was not well received. It actually got a Razzie Award for the worst picture of the year.
Oh my gosh.
What?
And Faye Dunaway was skewered by critics for her over-the-top campy performance. So it was definitely scalped and fricasseed and fried all over Hollywood. However, we in the LGBT community helped lead the way, and Mommy Dearest got the last laugh because now it commands a great big cult following, and we are a great significance to blame for that, to take credit for that. So
who at the table knew that? I thought it was a success from the beginning.
I always thought so too.
Yeah.
Actually, I kind of knew this because Faye Dunaway, in
old.
addition to the criticism of the acting, the number one criticism that was very popular when the movie came out was the makeup. That her makeup was so exaggerated. I remember reading several critics saying that basically she was a drag queen. I remember reading that because her makeup was so exaggerated.
And because the movie's so iconic now, I've always thought that as soon as it hit the box office, it just hit the ground running.
Well, girl, have you ever seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Nobody wanted to think.
I mean, that was a bomb too at first.
Nobody wanted to think she was that
I'm
bad.
going to move on. Tell me something else I didn't know.
Okay, so I'm going to do the thing I like to do and bring the conversation back to gender. The theory that biological sex is determined by your genitals is wrong. Surprise, surprise. But that actually, we knew that decades ago, according to endocrinologists. Biological sex, I'm not talking about just gender, biological sex is the outcome of multiple factors, from hormones to chromosomes to different genetic patterns to hormone levels in the womb, androgen sensitivity, all kinds of sciencey stuff that Bill Nye knows that I don't. And that all results in a spectrum of biological sexes, which then go on to affect gender identity. So the spectrum is not just about what you feel or what you identify as. Literally, there are more than two sexes.
I'm getting rainbow shots in my head and all different colors swirling.
The more you
gender
know.
identity.
That is highly complex. I'm going to have to digest that because that was
Well, you
more
only
than-
give us 30 seconds. So.
Yeah. That's right. All right. Anything
Next
else?
on It's
I will.
Happening Out.
I will let you in on something that you probably don't know or wish you didn't know, and
You
that
don't
is
want- you don't want in on this, apparently.
That is in April. There were over 500,000 illegal immigrants detained at the border. The crisis continues to increase on a monthly basis, and it's beyond any numbers that we've previously counted.
You know, it's funny. I didn't know that, actually. That is a very significant number. But the first thing that popped in my head when you did that is, welcome back, Joe, because I haven't thought about immigration in about a month. And Joe brings immigration back
My
to the table.
question with that is then, were any of those people kept in cages as well?
I'm going to move on. You told me something I didn't know. Thank you very much. Okay, next thing we want to talk about is big news. Did you
Ooh.
hear? The Equality Act has passed out of the House of Representatives. The Equality Act is the civil rights movement to add gay to definitions of equality in the Civil Rights Act. And it passed in Congress, but in the House of Representatives. But what was big news this week is it passed in Congress, in the House of Representatives, and we're showing you a little bit about it. Overwhelmingly, 100% of the Democrats in the House of Representatives voted yes to expand gay protection in the Equality Act, and not a single Republican voted for it in the House of Representatives. Not one. And that got us talking last week while I was in Cuba, and Joe was at his daughter's college graduation in Arizona. Congratulations, by the way. There was a little challenge at the table as they were talking about equality issues, and it was principally issued by Power. Let's go back to last Wednesday and see what the challenge actually was. Watch this.
I would like to say that, and I'm challenging It's Happening Out, and I'm going to say this on the air. I would like us to come back. Isn't Joe supposed to be back next week?
Yes.
Okay. Next week, I would like us to come back to this topic because I really don't think it does us too much good to talk about it. We all feel the same way. I want to hear what Joe has to say.
Yeah.
I want to hear what he has to say.
Let's go there. Let's go
So
there.
he's always talking about how pro-LGBT the Republican Party is, and how at the convention they were rah-rah and they were throwing a pride parade. Let's see the parade. Bring on the parade now. I want to see what Joe has to say. So next week, let's bring this back up. Jared Curry, run it back. And
Okay, Jared, you heard that.
Power
Run it back.
Infiniti for governor of Florida. Fighting
Well,
goes on.
Absolutely, Jared Curry, we've run it back.
and I said what I said.
All right. All right.
So here we are.
Here we are. So
I guess it's up to me.
We have this slide here about the Equality Act passing in Congress and the House of Representatives. 100% of the Democrats vote yes. 0% of the Republicans vote yes. All voted no. And we have a slide here about what this epic conversation about do Republicans support the gay
We'll let the
agenda?
Republican at the table speak.
So-
We're all dying to hear it.
And I've been pushed multiple times, y'all. Let's stop doing that. So we begin the conversation, and we begin the conversation. Joe, tell us about what you think.
So I'm going to start with hopefully a little example, and that is an analogy around color. We have three primary colors, right? And then there's three secondary colors. And outside of that, everything is a variation on the theme, right? It's a combination of those colors. When you look at the 1964 Equality Act, it puts out the basic set of sex, race, religion, nationality, and disability, the five key things. Everything else outside of that is a variation, like a hue of blues, right? If you've got all LGBT colors.
I apologize, but because of time, I'm going to have to ask you to zero in on your point.
So the point is, all of the things that we want to accomplish, can be accomplished with the Equality Act the way it is. Everything that was put in the Equality Act is a variation on the theme.
In theory, that would be great. But the trans community, which is where I can speak from, has faced repeated resistance to our rights being covered under, for example, sex discrimination, and challenging whether or not we are covered under Title IX. So if the Equality Act, the way it exists, really does cover everyone, then why are we here in the first place? Why are we here needing to say, here, these people actually exist as human beings too, if it was already established?
One of the arguments that I've heard, and I am very pro-trans rights, is that gender and sexual identity are a lot more fluid, just by definition.
Right, but I'm talking, and Joe, I really am curious as to your response to that. Why is it then that the Equality Act, as it stands, has repeatedly not covered the trans community, as an example?
Not only the trans community, but the gay community.
Right, as an example.
And even broader, the gay community.
In looking at some of the statements and actually the layout of the Equality Act, you can look at some of the provisions where they made it actually fairly fluid in terms of the interpretation. So I don't know why we're not going down that path. Part of it is people are afraid to over-define things, but there's also a fear of once you start down the hill of super definitions of every small thing, you get encompassed in litigation.
Okay,
hold on
1 second. I want to define clearly. I want to define clearly. Allow me, please,
to
ask 2 questions. If you were a congressman in that vote, would you have voted yes or no?
I would have voted no.
And because of the expansion of definition?
Because it's already covered by what is set up.
And what you're saying is not a single Republican in the House of Representatives voted yes because of standards like that. It's unnecessary.
Well, I don't know all of the examples, but I do know of a few examples where a congressman that exists now, a Republican congressman from Colorado, prosecuted the first trans hate crime, specifically around the Equality Act.
But that diverts my third question. How over the course, and Joe and I are going to talk about politics in a new segment that we're doing a lot over the next 18 months, leading up to the election on November 5th, 2020. How, with this vote being so stark, the definition is we've got protection already, we don't need to do more because the law already exists. How can the Republican Party reach out to the gay community and say, we've got your back because the laws already exist? How do they expect to get any support from the gay community when that's their definition?
And to go one step further.
Wait, please.
There has to be some level of outreach and some statements, but
if 100% of the House of Representatives say no, and the major definition is because you've already got protection, and we're not going to vote to protect you in the Equality Act, and 100% of the Democrats do it, what does the Republican Party expect gay America to do on November 5th but vote for Democrats?
Well, what do you think the reason was behind the Democrats putting forth a bill that had so much language in it that they knew the Republicans would not step up for
even
it?
If that's true, it seems to me that is irrelevant. My question is the relevant question. How does the Republican Party expect any gay people to vote for Republicans if they don't support them? How?
So you are stating that anybody's vote for president is going to be solely based upon whether or not they voted for the Equality Act or not. It's not based upon whether your physical responsibility.
If Martin Luther King was here, and I'm going to give some liberal. I'm going to allow for a moment. If this conversation was over Martin Luther King in 1964, the answer to that question would be yes. Dr. King would say it's all about the protection expansion of black civil rights. This definition says there is no need for expansion of gay civil rights. How can the Republicans expect a single vote for Donald Trump when his party does not believe in gay civil rights?
Wait a minute. Gay civil rights are different than
your civil rights or my civil rights or any of the people that are walking
If
around
it
here?
has to do-
No, it's you are protected based upon sex. You're protected based upon religion. You're protected based upon your
But legal
your
precedent
race.
says we're not. We haven't been. Repeatedly,
Yes,
we haven't
the
been.
gay civil rights are different from his, them, we. Yes, it is. So to answer that question shortly, it is. It is different.
It's that the Equality Act is being taken to defend spiritual rights, or by spiritual I mean religious rights. It's that the cake that won't be sold issue. Okay, so you're trying to enact this. You want the Equality Act to be in place because then you can't be sold by the Christian church or you can't adopt from this other church. It goes back down to religion entirely. It has less to do with gay and all to do with religion.
Can Power finish what he was saying about?
Well, power ain't even started. I'm just letting everybody else get out the way because
Okay,
I'm
well,
going to speak. Oh,
well,
sure, I'm going to speak.
All right. Well, then you're going to have to speak now because we're going to.
No. You guys took up all this time. I'm going to speak now. And
That's what
first
I
of all,
just said.
as Napoleon just pointed out about the religious thing, Tampa Pride put out something, and let me read it. Should sincerely held religious beliefs, exceptions, then be allowed for all of the civil rights acts? Race, creed, color, nationality, sex, housing, marital status? No, it's nothing more than a license to discriminate and a serious legal and a spiritual legal concept. And I totally agree with that. We have to understand that the reason Joe is saying that, and I'm hearing what Joe is saying, he's saying that there is no need for this extra protection because the protection is already implemented in the law, but it's not. That's where we're wrong. A national standard for the LGBT non-discrimination is what is needed because right now the way it is that 20 states have enacted a non-discrimination enactment to protect the LGBT community. However, those 20 states, the problem is that you can enjoy those protections in one state and then drive to another border and those protections are not met. We need a national standard that protects us all. There is no reason that any human being or any American should be at risk for being fired, evicted from their home, or denied services because of who they are or who they love. And right now, we have that danger. And right now, the Democrats are the only ones that seem to get that, and the Republicans don't. And I really have to ask you, Joe, do you actually believe what you're saying, or are you really just saying it to toe the party line?
No.
Because I really can't even believe that you actually in your heart believe that.
I absolutely believe it. Has it been implemented everywhere at a reasonable way? No. But I also believe in local rule. So as states adapt, as communities come together, and people become to realize what gay life is or couples are, some of that will change. But
So in the same vein, so if you believe in local rule, so do you believe it's okay for one state to discriminate against blacks and another state not to?
That's what he's saying.
No, that is not the case.
That's exactly what you're saying. It's the same thing.
Because the statements are there around sex. You're saying that in some locations people are abusing that and they need to be taken to court in order to remedy that. And the 1964 Act has provisions in order to go to court to remedy those situations.
For certain groups, not for us.
Yes.
It does not remedy it for us. It does not. It does not. And you want to know the other element I'm going to bring into this is that actually Donald Trump flip-flopped on this because in 2000 he conducted an interview. He was interviewed by the Advocate magazine, and he was all for the Equality Act. He has now flip-flopped, and the truth of the matter is that most Republicans actually don't have a problem with non-discrimination for gays. What has now changed and what has fueled the Republican Party is him. Because now, because of gender identity, it's become more of an issue with them. They don't really, it's not so much that they have a problem with gay discrimination.
They just can't stand the idea of me having to take a piss.
That's right, it's gender identity.
Did you read the Equality Act?
Yes, I did.
There is a way, it doesn't matter who you are, you can go into any public, any private school, whatever, and you can claim something, whether or not it exists or not. That law was so far-reaching, you could, it doesn't matter. You would have so many frickin' lawsuits that nobody would be able to do anything. People would be scared to piss in their own bathroom.
It wasn't far-reaching enough.
All right.
Oh my
Listen,
God.
It's not
this is
far-reaching
what it
enough.
just comes down to.
Absolutely
Stop
ridiculous.
settling for the vagueness.
Yes.
And don't be afraid of clarity. And in our legislation, let's get clear. If you sit in town halls, you can't even under the regular man and woman, the regular gay, straight, I don't even care what color you are. You sit in a town hall meeting and you may or may not understand what exactly is going on because everyone is reciting statutes, all right? We need to start creating legislation that is for everyone to understand. And if we have to get very clear about what it is and create the distinction, that's what elevates us. And that's what I have to add.
Okay. All right. So, I'm going to bring the conversation of the Equality Act.
No, you're not,
Good
because
job,
I got
Josie.
one more motherfucking thing to say. I got one more thing to say.
All right.
You know, and I'll say this. If the Equality Act, and the argument on the Republican side is that the Equality Act already encompasses everything that we need, and there is no more need. If there's no more need, then there should be no problem in clarifying what it encompasses, because according to you guys, it already encompasses those things. So if it already encompasses those things, then there should be no problem just clarifying. Okay, well, if it encompasses those things, then you guys should have no issue saying, okay, yes, there should be a national standard for LGBT protection because it already encompasses those things, right? So what's the problem? Everybody should have voted, right?
Almost every state or national statute has a clause that literally says it's called definitions, and it does
We're
exactly
in
that.
his
It clarifies everything. So what's the problem then?
Are you finished?
I am finished.
Okay. Well, now we're closing the conversation on the Equality Act, but an observation to close, because this is going to go on for months and months and months.
Yes.
Certainly for the half. We got it, Chris. To November 5th, 2020. I am reminded in this conversation, and I will just say it out loud again, and Joe, we appreciate your participation and your explanation. What is so stark about the Equality Act is the absolutes that took place. 100% of the Democrats, 0% of the Republicans. I am reminded, as a student of history, there was a Tea Party in Boston. And a group of people at a Tea Party in Boston said, "This is it no more." And a king across the sea shuddered and ultimately lost America for his decision on taxation. And this vote reminds me very much of the same thing, of what's going to happen.
You
Now,
cannot
come back in.
You cannot equate taxation with LGBTQ equality rights.
Absolutely,
they are
I
on,
agree.
No,
It's
they
his
are on.
chip.
They are on totally different levels of magnitude. One was the independence of a nation. The other is a social equality
people's lives.
standard. Okay, they're two very different things. People do not vote based upon whether you voted for the Equality Act. They're not going to vote for president for that.
We'll see.
Although I think the Democrats
I hope they do.
are basing that vote to try and get all of the gay population to vote for Democrats. That's fine. Go for it, because most of the Republicans that I know that are gay, they have far more principles to vote for that matter to the success, the longevity, the security, the fiscal responsibility of this country than just that.
Okay. All right. Well, as I said, this is going to be a key issue for the next 18 months. November 5th, 2020 is ahead. And gay America is going to make a decision, and then the rest of America is going to make a decision, and we're going to see what happens, and there's going to be lots of discussions in many different ways. Quite a good conversation here, and I'm going to move on.
Come to our fan page
next,
for more.
Please, y'all, please. I am moving on. We want to talk next about Cuba. What an incredible week it was in Cuba. Now, our story on Cuba is a little complicated because It's Happening Out brought a large American delegation to Cuba to support Havana Pride and the National March Against Transphobia and Homophobia, and we had a great time. The parade was canceled just a few days before our departure, And we continued on. We had many events and parties, and an impromptu protest was scheduled by the gay Cuban community on Saturday afternoon. And a number of things unfolded. So we're going to tell you this story. So first, let us show you some of what we wanted to do in terms of what went on with us in Cuba. Let's begin that, and then we'll talk over this video as we go. We're showing you, we'll need to turn that sound down just a little, please, here behind me. We're going to show you some pictures to watch. Video, Josie was quite prominent in it, and Napoleon was quite prominent in it. Tell us about some of the stuff that you experienced while you were in Cuba.
One of the things that I went in thinking was that homosexuality there would be like homosexuality in one of the states here, maybe Kansas, maybe Arkansas, ones that are not as prominent. But what I realized is that it's a completely different situation entirely. Homosexuality is okay in Cuba, but there is a lot of internalized fear and a lot of externalized homophobia that give people different reactions when they are actually gay. There were a few different people that I met that were afraid, if they were a guy and I'm a guy, to kiss on the street, to hold hands on the street. And I asked them what would happen, and they said, oh, well, the police could see it and something could happen. They said, what I said, would we be arrested? And they said, no, but we could be inciting something. The entire protest that I know we're going to get into was in part, that experience was people not knowing how to take charge and take action and being who they were, but being fearful of presenting that in public. I met so many people, drag queens that couldn't get into one of our events because they are, just like here, drag queens that didn't make enough money, and so they couldn't get in, and then they were sitting outside trying to figure out what they could do to get to the next party, who they had to trick to get to the next party, or how they could become more prominent to know that they were invited the next time that we came. A lot of life there in terms of the homosexual was very similar to what it is here, and a lot of it was very different. Everything there has its own checks and balances, and I'm curious as to how other people heard about this.
Josie, what were your impressions?
Joey is appropriate. That's my alter personality. Anyways, Cuba was an eye-opening experience having grown up here in South Florida. I thought I'd call some of my friends from Hialeah who I'd grown up with and maybe have them set something up for me. But I wanted to experience this for the first time on my own.
And you did.
Yeah. And, one of the things I was so surprised of was the ability for my wife and I to walk on the streets of Cuba, and I did not fear at all intimidated or afraid to be myself, and I felt very at home walking down any street in Cuba. I mean, we went on a trek on our last day. We must have walked 5 miles through the neighborhoods and shady neighborhoods, empty dark streets, full, buzzing highways. We experienced it all. What was really interesting as well was the drag scene. It was like the drags in Cuba are very much like the women of Cuba, so very dramatic and like it was, even their numbers, it was all very
intense.
Over the top.
Over the top.
They did a lot of Mother's Day numbers.
Man, they had the best quinceañera dressmakers because my wife was going crazy over their costumes.
That's funny.
Yeah, and but more importantly, the people are warm. The experience of the island, you can feel the passion, you can feel the buzz, you can feel the oppression, and you can feel the restriction. And I can also see the influence of our the U.S. Influence in the short time that we've been able to flood the gates. I can see how our influence has almost tainted the system.
It's actually interesting, if I could interrupt, because we want to propel the story to that observation. We were there, and It's Happening Out in the American delegation brought thousands of condoms and lube packets, individual lube packets, and Napoleon was one of our principal distributors, and we would be at these big parties, and you would have thought we were passing out $20 bills.
People
at
were
these events.
crazy for them.
Crazy for it.
Josie, can I ask you a quick question? I'll make it quick. You talked about feeling safe walking down any street.
Oh, yeah.
And being gay, walking down any street, feeling safe is amazing. Did you feel a similar difference between here and there as far as just walking down the street as a woman?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was the weird thing, because I felt completely safe in Cuba, and I've walked down some streets here in South Florida, right here in Miami, Dade County.
There's a lot more guns and drugs
and
here.
I'm wary.
What do you think the difference?
Wait. I've got to direct the conversation here. I've already talked about the condoms. I'm back, and the lions are just eating me tonight. We had the national parade on Saturday that was canceled. At the end of the parade at the Malecon, there was going to be this diversity party. And the American delegation, and It's Happening Out, went to the diversity party. We provided lots of information. We have these lanyards, which I hold up right now, of this special logo with the American flag, the rainbow flag, and the Cuban flag, saying in Spanish and English, "Together with Pride." And it had Cinesex, which is the government organization sponsoring the national event, and the Divino Project, which implements all of the social activities. All of our guests had these around their neck when we went to this party. And Mariela Castro showed up to the party. I looked at Mariela Castro, and she looked at me, and it was clear, don't approach. But some of our guests did, which is interesting. And we wanted, and I give production this heads up to show the diversity
This is the
video
diversity party
now.
designed
we want
to
show
end
you
the national
the highlight of that event that we attended.
All right.
It's Happening Out attended Havana Pride. This is the diversity party designed to end the national march against homophobia and transphobia in Havana. The parade was canceled just days
Now we're gonna do
before
one
the
last
event
video,
over
and we're gonna
concerns
talk over
about
that,
protest
about, the
in
protest.
Havana over Helms-Burton, U.S. policies, and Venezuela. Thousands attended this. It's Happening Out coordinated a large American delegation that was attended at the Diversity March by Mariela Castro. She even engaged many of the It's Happening Out guests.
Personas heterosexuales, no solo personas LGBT, porque todas las personas tenemos que unirnos para buscar beneficios colectivos.
There was a protest countermarch by the gay community just hours before this event.
Invitado especial fue el activista y luchador por los derechos LGBTI estadounidense Cliff Jones.
Cleve Jones, founder of the AIDS Names Project, also spoke at the diversity party.
I promise you
Les prometo
that all of us who came here tonight from America,
que todos los que estamos aquí esta noche
We will
desde
go
los
home to
Estados
our
Unidos
country.
vamos a regresar a nuestro país
and we will do everything we can
y vamos a hacer todo lo que podamos
to end the blockade
para terminar el bloqueo
and bring our countries
y
together.
para poder acercar a nuestros
Venceremos.
países. Vamos a vencer.
The Diversity Party was the big signature event at Cuba Pride and the National March against homophobia and transphobia in Havana. One of the things that I thought was interesting, and all of the American delegation reacted to this, our signage, our name badges showing what we were doing were so unbelievably embraced. If we had had 1,000 posters, we could have distributed them. The Cubans wanted them. They wanted to hold them up. They wanted to support gay pride. Now, the last important note is what was happening just hours before this, as you saw in this package. And that was the situation of this impromptu march that took place on the Prado. Just approximately a mile away, 2 hours before this, there was a gay march where they communicated among themselves by text. And gay Cubans communicated with each other, and approximately, by best reports, 1,000 people showed up and did an impromptu march. It has made national and international news, and we're going to show an example of that from Euro news in Europe. And we're going to talk over this as we go. There was arrests at the march of this impromptu march for unlawful assembly. Other thoughts about the experience in Cuba, or thoughts that you have, questions that you have about our experience in Cuba?
Going into this, I had heard about this march on Friday from one of the newly gay friends I found the day before it happened. Not with specific information, just with the intent and nature of what power was going to be had at this event. It's crazy to me to see how it played out, knowing just slightly about it ahead of time, because I would have gone to this event, and who knows what would have happened if we had not just had slight other detours. I would have been at the protest. They were great at getting other people involved, and all of Cuba that was gay seems to have known about it in a very short time frame.
And this is what we call courage. In this country that is a communist country, I want to just remind all the viewers, there are video cameras on top of every single building in Cuba, with the possible facade of being, surveillance or watched the entire time and for everything you do. There are people, I think that we heard that someone has disappeared after this march, and you have to remember that around the world, and this was again one of the things that I'm bringing home with me, is how very grateful I am to be in this country, even having a conversation with an Equality Act that passes without not even one single Republican member of support. But still, in this country, we still have the freedom to be who we are. And in Cuba, that is just courage there in front of our face.
To echo what you said, let's not take for granted the fact that the same exact thing for us happened 50 years ago. And we're lucky that we are 50 years ahead of that curve.
I was with some Cubans that went on the night after this riot happens, and they did not think it was a riot. They were looking at images of someone in a chokehold and other aggressive-looking images, and their exact statement was, "Oh, this just looks more violent than it was. This doesn't represent what happened at all."
And I have to agree to that observation, because one of the things that I did not like in the international reporting, being right in the middle of this was not anti-gay in any way.
No.
There was no representation of this being anti-gay. This was anti the what's going on in the world and the paranoia in Cuba of assembly, of people getting together.
Protest.
So I frankly, I would go back to Cuba in a heartbeat, and I hope that I will be able to. And I know you would go back.
in a heartbeat very quickly. Christian, hope to see you soon, buddy.
Next time we, I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said, Christian, I hope to see you soon, buddy.
And he was beautiful. He absolutely was. So we had a great time in Havana, and our experience at Havana Pride was wonderful. The last thing that we'd like to do tonight is, of course, interesting. We moved from Havana to Stonewall, the exact connection that you just made.
Yeah.
And on the road to Stonewall, tonight we honor one of the great names of the Stonewall movement, and that is Marsha P. Johnson.
Woo!
Watch this that we've prepared.
The modern gay rights movement began on June 28, 1969, when New York City police raided the Stonewall Inn.
It was a bar for hustlers and street queens, and these are people who had nothing to lose when they fought back against the police.
If you think back in history, it's those people who really start these kind of revolutions.
Marsha's birthday was celebrated that evening, and she came into the Stonewall Inn to just hang out with Sylvia and her friends, and then all of a sudden, stuff popped off.
They said that she threw the first shot glass at Stonewall, and it was the shot glass heard around the world.
The riots lasted for 3 days, and when they were over, Marsha and Sylvia's work began.
These two street queens who barely had enough to feed themselves, but they started STAR as a way to take care of their sisters.
Street transvestite action revolutionaries. For me, it's the home that Marsha and Sylvia created.
They pulled their money together, the money that they hustled in Times Square, making money from John's, and they used that money to take care of themselves.
This is back in the 70s when resources weren't being allocated to trans youth like that, or the LGBT youth that were on the street.
Although Marsha and Sylvia worked tirelessly for the greater gay rights movement, they weren't always welcome. At the first Pride marches, people again tried to push Marsha and Sylvia aside, but they would not be stopped. For over 20 years, Marsha was a fixture in the New York City Pride parades.
She had to march because people died for her to have the right to march.
That's how come I've been walking for gay rights all these years, because you never completely have your rights. One person until you all have your rights.
In 1992, Marsha marched one last time. Just days after the parade, her body was found in the Hudson River.
There were flyers and flyers everywhere of her beautiful face because the police ruled it a suicide.
Marsha's friends said, no, I don't think so. Marsha had been harassed in the very place where she had been found dead.
Sylvia found a community and rediscovered her passion for activism. She fought for transgender rights. She fought for people with AIDS. She fought for the hungry. And after being diagnosed with liver cancer, even on her deathbed, she fought for the cause she and Marsha cared about most.
I wonder, who are the Marsha P. Johnsons and the Sylvia Riveras of our day? Folks who are doing vital work, who we might be pushing aside.
There are still young kids out here in the streets who will tell you that they are the daughters and sons of Sylvia and Marsha. So it's because of them that we are. And that's something that we can't ever lose sight of.
Well, I hope America, especially gay America, is proud of our march to Stonewall. It's June 30th of this year in New York at the World Pride Parade and the march, the Stonewall Parade. Each week as we do this and celebrate our gay icons as we march up to the Stonewall celebration, all of our hosts tell us a little bit about who we honor and something that they have said. And we're going to do the same tonight. We'll begin with Power.
Marsha P. Johnson was an activist, a drag performer, and a prostitute, or as the young children say today, a sex worker, and there's nothing wrong with that. And she said, and she's a bitch after my own heart, I don't bite my tongue for nobody, which can get you murdered, you know.
Aaron.
So the gay movement has largely minimized Marsha's role throughout our history, considering her image less than idealistic. She was poor, she was black, gender fucked, HIV positive, mentally ill, homeless, and, as Power said, a sex worker. But her impact, nonetheless, is undeniable. Marsha P. Johnson said, I may be crazy, but that don't make me wrong.
And Josie.
So as Aaron mentioned, you know, Marsha P. Johnson battled with mental health, something that we have stigmatized here in the country for so long. She spent most of her life in and out of mental hospitals. That her living just proves that even with mental health, she still was able to be a leader in activism. To this day, her death was reopened from a suicide to an ongoing investigation into a homicide. Marsha P. Johnson said, no pride for some of us without liberation for all of us.
Lovely. Napoleon.
Marsha was a prominent figure in New York City gay art scenes. She was a model to Andy Warhol and performed with the drag troupe Hot Peaches. She said, history isn't something you look back at and say it was inevitable. It happens because people make decisions that are sometimes very impulsive and of the moment. But those moments are cumulative realities.
Awesome. And Joe.
Marsha P. Johnson made her mark with her shot glass heard around the world that she threw at the first instigating the march. She said, we all count. I will not be erased.
You know, I have to tell you, I'm having feelings that I didn't have this afternoon about Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. And what I am struck about is our conversation about equality in general, and especially Power's observation. Power's observation that the problem in the Republicans or the problem in conservative or evangelical movements in America is not about gay anymore, but it's about, and he points to Aaron. I have been
you gave me chills when you said that.
And me too. Honestly, it chills me right to my bones. Because as I listened to this conversation, I knew very little about her. But I do know that three trans people were really at the heart of showing how to have courage and stand up. And 3 people in the trans community, and specifically Marsha P. Johnson, did throw the shot glass that was heard around the world. And that was 50 years ago. Imagine the courage it took. I'm just stunned in this conversation that we have had that it never even dawned on me that what we're facing today is maybe not gay, but it is trans. I'm just stunned.
It's a new battle, a new frontier, and child, the Republicans don't give a fuck, child.
It's a new day, and we've got to make sure that we address it. Our march to Stonewall, our road to Stonewall is paved with many icons, and tonight Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera are 2 of them. And we invite you, go back and look at some of our tributes. It has been quite an amazing experience, and we're going to continue. We're going to continue all the way up to June 30th, 2019, until that Stonewall Parade marches down the streets of New York City. It is our civil rights movement, and we hope you join us in our road to Stonewall. And we salute everybody that we have brought to your attention. We bring our show to an end tonight. We are happy to completely be back. Carlos, we miss you. Carlos is with family and friends, I believe, in Chicago. And we'll be back next week. And Josie will not be here next week because she's finally going, after being married for years and years and years, on a well-needed honeymoon to, what was it, Valdosta, Georgia? Where are you going? Where are you going again?
Bali, baby. That's right.
Bali.
Congratulations.
Great. It's going to be.
Stay tuned for all the sexy photos. I mean, no.
Exactly. We remind you, and we have a slide. We have a fantastic television personality, Dr. Moses Irizarry, is going to be here next week. Lots of information up about PrEP and some of the news that's coming in about the consequences of PrEP, and he'll be a special guest on the show next week. I catch out of the corner of my eye, and I'm so glad to see Thomas come on in. As we know, Thomas is back. And Thomas is with us from Jet's Pizza here in South Florida, and it's a great pizza. How have you been, Thomas?
Pretty good.
Good to see
just
you.
Pretty good, that's it?
Doing all right.
How's the dating life going? Everything great?
Not so much.
Oh, we're going to talk after the show. Well, welcome back to us. And we're getting ready here at the Grand Hotel, Fort Lauderdale. Everyone here is getting ready to enjoy a lot of Jet's Pizza. And thank you, Thomas, for being with us. And get out of my shot now. As I always remind you, you've been here long enough. I'm only kidding with you, Thomas. All right,
Next time we can
so
share the
it's
mic.
time for us to say goodnight. And as always, we ask our host to say goodnight in their special way. And we begin with Power.
Children, even though I'm saying goodnight, I'm asking you not to sleep. Don't sleep on your liberties. Don't sleep on your freedoms. Don't sleep on your equality. Take care.
All right. And Aaron?
Good night, survivors.
And Josie?
Good night, gentle people. Stay woke.
And Napoleon Plays?
Buenas noches, mi cubano amigos.
Anyone on Facebook, private message me and I'll tell everything. And Joe Brookman.
Good night, family. We love you.
And on behalf of all of us, a lot of our conversations are fun, and we play games, and some of our times our conversations are really serious. It's a really serious world, and we address everything. So we remind you, that's the reason that you should tune in every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. We are the only place that I think in America that is doing this and talking about these kind of things that need to be talked about. We are searching for gay culture, and we're trying to find gay community. We think it exists, and we want you to come along on the journey to help us find it. So if it's important to you, remember, it's happening out.
Good night.
Good night, America.
Good night.